Beyoncé launched Ivy Park. George Clooney turned Casamigos into a billion-dollar tequila brand. And Rihanna didn't just sing about shining bright. She built Fenty into a global empire. But here's the thing. Not every business has a celebrity name to back it up. Most founders don't walk into pitch meetings with millions of followers or a movie deal. So how do real entrepreneurs get investors to swipe right? In this 3-part series, we asked 15 founders who've actually done it. No filters, no fluff. You'll hear how they raised capital, what they wish they never said in a pitch, and what makes investors lean in or walk away. This is the stuff you won't find on Google. Let's go.
Attracting the right investors to fund your business dream can be challenging but vital to secure funds. With so many companies competing for attention, how do you stand out? We ask the experts.
1.
They have investor events. So you can go to investor events. You can literally look up investors and cold email them, cold call them. But just remember, you're going to be in a pile of a bunch of people doing that. So there's nothing special out of the gate. Does that work? Yeah, it absolutely works, right? But it's not going to be like you send one message and all of a sudden you just end up with $30 million. It is a relationship built, and the first thing I would tell people is before you're taking money, why are you taking money? In other words, you can internally fund things, externally fund things. A lot of times people think they need to externally fund things. So if you have a software project, why not pre-sell that to see if the market's even going to accept it? So what do you need to pre-sell that? You can design out very inexpensively what the software does, create a presentation around that, and then ask people to be some of the founding members and the pre-investors in that process, right? You don't have to give equity away, but when you go talk to an investor, it's a very different conversation when it's like, look, we have 1,300 people on our system right now. Then we have nobody, and this is just an idea. Because when we have nobody and it's an idea, the investor's gonna go, high risk, unproven. So if I give you the money, I want a big chunk of this, or I want you to put your house up, or I want you to put that up. What am I going to get my money back from, right? How quick am I getting my money?
2.
We look for investments, make sure that you build a very credible business model. In our case, we have a number of different revenue streams. We also have a clear idea about how much it costs to acquire a customer. All of the details are critically important day one. Number one, you might be wrong in your assumptions, but it shows that you've thought through the problem and you've thought through the details. That's probably the most important aspect of any business model at the beginning. None of those business models are likely going to be the actual end result. You hope that you built it in such a way that you far exceed the expectations, but they all change the minute you open up the door and you start your business. But do build an interactive, clear business model, and then also do build a pitch deck with a professional who has actually pitched to investors before, and they understand the cadence and the time of how that pitch is put together so that it builds the story for your ask. I did that with a guy about a year ago for Pro Valet, and his insight was invaluable. I couldn't believe how much money I was paying him, but what I will hopefully tell you in a year is that I can't believe how inexpensive it was based on the results. So definitely do that. I find that it's like a lot of sales. I find that what I would not do is I would not use the shotgun approach and take a list of 16,000 investors and spray your pitch to all of them, hoping that somebody says yes. I would suggest that trying to find an alignment with whatever your project is and your funding level. Where are you? Are you in pre-seed, seed, series A, B, C? You need to find those investors that fit that model. So I would not simply spray it out. I would not hide from the realities that somebody's going to bring to the fore. In other words, you're going to get people that are going to give you a lot of advice along the way. If you're any good at the concept of networking, you're going to get a lot of people that are going to give you a lot of advice. Some of it is going to be solid advice, some of it's going to be wrong, and some of it's just going to simply be not the right time. So you have to put it through the filter of what do I really need today? And also, by the way, I'm not shying away from actually getting out and talking to people is really important.
3,
I think is really selective to who we present as investor. I think that's what we learned. At the very beginning, we really is get as many people we can present. Again, we go for big names. We have so many brands in the line to present to them, want to work with them, right? That's we went. And I think that if we ever need a second round, that's what would probably avoid, just really selective who you go present and who you think has the highest chance to be interested in your business and you as founders.
4,
My initial investors were founded through my business partner, Jim Landis. These are people who've invested in other projects he's had in the past. And those are your angels out there. These are the guys that are putting in a huge bulk of the money. But after a while, he said, I was looking at my company. Remember, this is the first black-owned scotch. It's the U.S. veteran-owned scotch. And I realized I didn't have one black, one minority, or one veteran. I didn't have one Italian-owned investor in my company. And I remember a company from the late 80s called Fubu. And it was clothing design. It stood for us, by us. And it was clothing that was designed for black urban populace. I loved that. I was like, wait a minute, how can I'm a black-owned or minority-owned or a veteran-owned scotch or company in general if I don't have one black investor, one minority investor, one Italian investor, one veteran investor? It didn't make sense to me. So after looking through the investors and what the minimum investors were, I was like, wait, I see this now. The average investment is more than the average person can afford. The minimum investment is more than the average person can afford. And I created this for the average person because I am an average. And I looked at it, I was like, well, what if I lowered the investments, the minimum investment, to something that was more affordable? Because right now, the only way to become wealthy is to be wealthy. You can't make money without having money. And I didn't like that. I wanted to give my people, the broad, range of people that I come from, I wanted to give them the opportunity to make wealth. So if you give someone the opportunity, they'll jump on it. So these are friends and family. And what I did is I lowered the minimum investment to something that my friends and family could afford. And it just went gangbusters after that. Hey, I have a buddy of mine. He's a colonel. He's about to retire, or she's a Navy officer and she wants to retire. My friend is black. My friend is Indian. My friend is Indian. He's Puerto Rican. And I was like, yeah. So I created an investment opportunity. So, I guess my people, if you will.
5,
I mostly bootstrapped for the company, did play around with the idea of getting investors. I certainly did my research and dug into it. At the end of the day, I chose not to go that route because I was in a financial place where I could make the investments myself. And so knowing that, we could both kind of push that forward. And I came to a crossroads where it was sort of, I either get investors or I just diversify and also find other income and revenue streams. And so I also started just pushing some advertising work and, even like setting up TBD is hosted in Shopify. And as I was becoming quite the expert in Shopify, as running it for my own company, I would also just sell some side services to other companies to help them set up their Shopify. So I opted to diversify my revenue streams rather than get investors, which is certainly not always the right decision for every company, but with my model, the way it was structured, it worked for me. And I am glad that I went that route because I think that it works for the coffee company.
6,
We have helped organizations get ready to pitch for funding. So whether that be in the nonprofit space where they are looking for specific grants to help support their programs, we're very effective at helping organizations get their narrative right, and how important it is to get your story right, and how important it is to demonstrate your impact, and how important it is to have processes and systems and operations all in place to ensure that the organization can be incredibly efficient and effective. That's to get grant funding and to raise money. When we do strategic planning for organizations, we often say this strategic plan is a fundable asset. And what we mean when we say fundable asset is it's something you can take to funders and say, look at our thinking, look at the impact we want to make, look at what we've achieved thus far. Will you please fund this for us? So having a strategic plan is such a great tool and a great vehicle for fundraising. So I share that story to say a lot of those concepts that I shared with you around nonprofit raising money, do they have a value proposition? Is their narrative clear? Is their impact clear? Are they measured? Can you demonstrate success? Is it a scalable concept? All applies to the for-profit world as well. So when for-profits are looking for investors to come on board, it's really important to kind of demonstrate that you have a really great idea that's been tested and somewhat proven, and now you want to scale your organization. Let me tell you what scaling looks like. And it's basically building that kind of slide deck that would allow you to share your narrative and your impact, and then use that to raise money. Now, on the for-profit side, you also need financial models and forecasting and making sure that, the returns that you are looking to get for your investors are real and that your investors feel like they're achievable. Slightly different in the nonprofit space, so that's like an added complexity in the for-profit space. But the fundamentals are the fundamentals. Is this a great organization that's doing major work that's relevant and broad in its reach?
7.
I'll start by saying that I have 0 investors. I have not raised any money, and I'm not currently raising any money. And this entire business was built initially with a couple $1,000s and a lot of my time and expertise. We definitely now have a big team that's working behind the scenes, but it's all self-funded. We're able to basically just reinvest what the company is able to make back into the company to continue to grow, and in this case now fund some of the technologies that we're trying to build and many of the things that we need. Look, the reality is that it is very hard to build a business. It is very hard to build a business without money. In fact, most businesses require a lot of money to get started. I think that I was in a lucky place and had the skills that will really help me build a business without any big capital investment. And I think that was really just a combination of luck and being in the right place at the right time. But generally speaking, I do also believe that you don't have to always just rely on money to make a business basically exist, right? Now, sure, to grow it is a different thing, but I think that if you as an entrepreneur have an idea and you want to make it happen, today more than ever, there's so many tools and so many ways to start affordably, to at least test your ideas, to have a minimum viable product and something that you can test, that if you find that there's success in it, then you can actually get investment to grow it. But I think that if you're not able to build a business completely at all, it might just be from lack of truly wanting to do it. At least that's my opinion, because I tend to think that whatever I want to do, I can do it. Whether I'll fail or not is a different story, but I think there's plenty of tools out there to do it, and it's about commitment to trying to build something.
Pitching to a potential investor is like a first date. Just as much as you need to know what to say, you also need to know when to zip it. What should you never say to an investor? We ask the experts.
1.
You never want to admit that you don't think this is possibly going to work. But I've seen people do this. It's like, I've got this great idea that it's untested, unfounded. I'm not really sure it's going to work, but I believe it's going to, and therefore you want give me your money. I mean, they're looking for confidence, right? Confidence is sexy, so to speak, right? And we all want to believe in what somebody is confident in. Now, whether they do or not, one's going to have to prove it in the numbers and the business thing. The other thing that you never want to do with investors is take way too much time. So when we go to investors, we want to absolutely convey what we can in the shortest amount of time and let them ask questions. The third thing you never, ever, ever, ever want to do with an investor is to lie. And I've seen people do this too. And they go, well, how long did it take you to get here? And people go, well, I started, it took us 9 months to get here, or 8 months, or 7, or whatever it was. But 3 years they've been in the process of getting to where they started to sell. So they don't tell the investor, oh, well, for 3 years we were kind of figuring this thing out. And then what ends up happening is the investor's not dumb. Most of them, they figure out what's going on and they're like, okay, you broke trust. That's it. We're done. So never lie. If you've been knocked down 3 or 4 times and you got back up and you got this thing to, $600,000 in sales, and it's just like you wouldn't quit. And if they're the right type of investor, they're going to go, you're the type of person that I want, right? If they're not the right type of investor, they're going to tell you, now, you know what, we don't do that. And that's okay. If anybody's going to go for investment money, I do want them to understand sometimes it can be a full-time job. And so prepare for that, because it's like asking people out on a date. Not all of them say yes. And so you've got to keep asking and go out on dates and figure it out. And it takes time.
Chew.
Over-promising and guarantee success. That's, I think, general rule. You can share your passion, share your vision, and share your experience and your stories, but never over-promising you're going to hit a certain target in a certain amount of time. Yes, investor wants to know where your project sells, where your profits, projections, but that's projection. Just never over-promise that, right? And never guaranteed, and this is going to happen. I'm going to have a successful business. It's all startups and everybody knows the risk. So I think that's for sure we as founders will avoid when we pitch.
Tree.
I've made a lot of mistakes with what I have said to investors, and it was a big no-no. I would refrain from saying, this is $1 billion business when you don't even have a customer. It's a big turnoff. As much as you might believe that, an investor is just going to simply say, no, it's not, because there's too much between where you are and this ideal. Everybody loves the enthusiasm, but I wouldn't say that. I also would never tell an investor that they're wrong, because again, you don't know the position from which they're delivering their advice or their feedback. So I've made that mistake before, and that didn't turn out well. So I don't mind stating my opinions about things, but we always take into context the audience to whom we're telling our opinion.
Fool.
Never not tell the truth. And I say that with some hesitancy. I'm not suggesting people will lie, but I am suggesting that sometimes people might not have the answer, so they either kind of make it up on the fly or they say something that might be a little bit misleading of sorts. So make sure that make sure you always have 100% integrity throughout the process. That should be a given, but sometimes people get nervous and they think they should have the answer and they don't, so they panic on the spot. Don't panic would be another piece of advice. And also, it's okay to say, I don't know. It is absolutely okay to say, you know what? I don't know. But that's an awesome question, and I'm going to follow up with you to make sure that you have an answer that's satisfactory to you.
5.
I had the opportunity to work with my father, who was a phenomenal businessman and entrepreneur. I got to stand on the shoulder of a giant and learn and watch, see how he would kind of work a room and how he was just compassionate, was interested, and wanted to hear what people had to say. And so I believe that's, carry over with me. But, the main thing is connecting with your audience. What we tend to find a lot of times is we're so anxious to get our story out and get, our agenda out, and that we kind of miss the relationship building piece. We got to slow down, let the play develop. What I mean by that is ask questions, learn.
The Best of Business Show is brought to you by the BASA Awards. The BASA Awards exist to recognize, reward, and promote exceptional small businesses. We run 4 award programs: Best of America, Best of Australia, Best of Canada, Best of UK. Remember, it's strictly for small businesses only. Nominate your business today.